talking and everything. Good afternoon, everybody who is here and those who are watching. I'm calling to order the study session meeting of July 9th, 2025. City Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Carnevale.
Here.
Councilmember Lamb. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregory. Mayor Ross.
Here. And then do we have any changes to our study session agenda?
I have no changes, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. City Clerk, will you please read the statement of participation?
Public comment is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are within the City Council's jurisdiction but not on the agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. The mayor may also request a brief response from staff to questions raised during public comment or request that a matter be agendized for a future meeting. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. If you're a member of the public and you wish to address the City Council, please complete a request to speak form available at the entrance and submit it to the City Clerk. You will be called upon at the appropriate time. If you have materials or other items to present to the members of the City Council, please do not approach them. All materials shall be presented to the City Clerk for distribution. I have not received any requests to speak forms for public comment, but if you're a member of the public and you wish to provide public comment, please raise your hand. And it looks like there's just staff in the chamber.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate it. So our first item today is a study session, and it begins with A, special event safety procedure presentation. I'm guessing that's you.
It is.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. This is an item that actually was one of your objectives from the strategic planning session to make sure that we were current and up to date on our safety procedures and protocols for our special events. So Ryan Hunt is going to present this item. Commander Andy Diaz is his primary contact person in the police department who's been working with him on this. Ryan?
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. It's good to be with you this afternoon. And as Charlie mentioned, a really good conversation that I thought we had at the strategic planning workshop as well. We've had a busy time since then of talking about ways to enhance our safety procedures and protocols for the fall event season. Certainly don't stand here alone. As the City Manager mentioned, police obviously has a very active role in this, as does Public Works and several other departments. So it really does take a village to make sure we keep all of our residents and visitors safe. Certainly something we take very seriously. And so started with a little bit of a lighter image showing that we can protect and have a little fun too in the bed race. That was the police department from a few years ago in the bed races.
Incidentally, did they win that bed race? No, I
Neither
just don't
confirmed nor
remember. It was
denied.
so long ago.
think they were close. The strategic plan goal, as we mentioned, E14, renew and improve our event safety planning protocols and standards. That's the streets, that's the garage, that's the amphitheater, parks, and others. And I think we cover a little bit of everything here in this presentation. So, really, I think the biggest thing is just studying and always keeping aware of the evolving threat environment that we encounter, not just here in the Coachella Valley, but incidents that we study that happen all across the country, and increasing our security concerns, in this evolving environment, I should say, it's important to increase our security concerns. They require updated procedures, learning from incidents, as I mentioned, in other jurisdictions, adopting industry best practices. We recently, I'll get into it a little bit more later, but we recently sent Adam Chastain to a special event safety seminar in San Diego, which was really, really great. Took a lot of valuable information there. But looking at, incidents that have taken place in Las Vegas and New Orleans, we've already used some of that information to make modifications for this past year's events. So I think this is really just taking the next step as we kind of, not that we always haven't taken safety seriously, but I really think we've gotten in a groove of what we're doing here to make sure that it's protocol that extends not just to larger scale events, but our smaller scale events too, and making sure that they get the attention that they deserve as well. So it is a multi-department coordination. The police department, public works department, communications and events, Cathedral City Fire Department, facilities, IT department, our third-party event organizers. We're also going to be adding Jeremy Frey, our building official, to these discussions. So we have these logistics meetings, and I can go through the timeline, but we do about a 30-day planning process with the pre-event logistics meetings. It's about a 2.5 hour, very detailed call with the third-party event organizer, with all the departments that I mentioned. And we go over all the layouts, all the submissions for proposal, and talk about where there may be some cracks in the safety and where we could shore things up. And so this is a really good conversation and a chance to go over our coordination when it comes to protocol and that collaboration to work together. And that also includes setting up scheduling when it comes to site walkthroughs. So Public Works and the fire department, anything that has any type of fire component, obviously our balloon festival, Taste of Jalisco with the carnival inspections, that all requires final walkthrough and approval by staff before that even goes live. So, and we have had really good walkthroughs that I've been a part of the last few years where we have found things where we've been able to tinker and improve. And Sound Skills in particular, I think, does a really good job of coming in with a background. They do events all across the country, so it's a good collaboration. Nobody's defensive. We all want priority to be safety for you don't have a successful event without a safe event. So I think doing everything we can on the pre-planning side to make sure that we're ready for anything that may come our way. Obviously, we're not going to get into some of the details of what our ops plans look like, for public distribution. We want to keep that confidential, but I think we'll give you enough information that you'll feel hopefully secure that we're doing everything we possibly can to keep everybody safe. And so the building department, as I mentioned, I want to give them kudos. They've done a good job with some of the temporary structures and the tinting, things that I just feel like we've got a lot more attention to detail on when it comes to the components of keeping an event safe. So the Special Event Safety Alliance training that Adam attended was a 2.5-day specialized course in San Diego. It was comprehensive training, and it really focused on all different types of events because, here in Cathedral City, with your guidance and approval as a city council, we have a diverse profile, not just in demographics that we're reaching, but in the types of events that we're carrying out. And each one kind of has a different way to look at it from a safety and security standpoint. So festivals and parades, he learned about carnivals and marathons, sporting events and concerts, movie productions, really ran the gamut as far as what he was able to get real-time experience. They had tabletop exercises. They really put them through almost what I would describe as a FEMA training that I went through a few years ago about, just making sure that you have real live experience, even if it's a mock scenario, being able to act quickly. And I was really impressed with the booklet and the notes that he came back with, and I'll show you kind of what we're using that for moving forward. So, just going over some of what we do use, the water-filled Jersey barriers, aka K-rails, you can see the design there, type 2 barricades with road closed signage, temporary chain link fencing. These are kind of standard elements that we use. Strategic vehicle positioning. Strategic vehicle positioning is really a last resort to kind of cover and create a deeper wall and vulnerable areas that could come in for vehicle traffic. We're really strategic about. We usually have extra staff vehicles, Public Works, code, police, fire, vehicles that usually aren't in rotation doing the actual job of public safety. They're there as extra barricades, which is good too. But we're really always trying to protect against vehicle-borne threats. We've had individuals that have tried to drive over that gravel area over by Luchador. We had one during Balloon Festival that I had to stop myself. That was live action experience right there. It was they didn't get in front of the car, but we stopped it before going. But it's like, hey, we were just going to charge our vehicle, and it's like, well, there's a festival here. So I think making sure we have less vulnerability when it comes to vehicular traffic, and I know Chief Param has really prioritized that side of it as well. Commander Diaz, Chief Sanchez, everybody doing a great job with that. The infrastructure enhancements, though, in addition to buying more of this equipment, because I think we noticed, especially as we were preparing for LGBT plus days, we ended up having to purchase a few more K-rail barricades because we have started to see the scope of our events and the scale of our events from attendance increase. So we need to adapt accordingly. And so I think we've done a really good job of being able to make sure our inventory is where it needs to be. But I also think that there's some enhancements recommended by you all as a city council, and we did make them as part of the budget process for permanent event bollards versus K-rails. So we're going to try to do more permanent bollard structures that can pop up during events. Palm Springs has had some success there. Talking to my counterpart over there, I think that could be something that will give us just a little bit more re-emphasized infrastructure there to keep any type of vehicles from passing through. We've also budgeted for hardening of the parking structure. There's some weakness areas where not only from the driving side of things, but also from people hopping that fence over to get into the amphitheater. There's definitely some weak spots in that second level over there. So we are working on components there with Facilities and Public Works to enhance the hardening of the parking structure and make that safer, especially during event weekends. And so the target installation for a lot of that is fall 2025. We had a really productive meeting yesterday with all staff involved, Public Works, Police Department, to talk about, strategic positioning and locations that we think some of the permanent bollards could be utilized. And so we plan to get going on that really as soon as we finish this presentation. We'll get started and hopefully have that. Our goal is to get everything up by October 1, which is really our go time for the fall event season. It's really even sprinkled in a little bit earlier than that post Labor Day. So, we will be consulting, as I mentioned, with Police and Public Works. They are taking most of the lead on where the strategic positioning is, but they're consulting with Communications and Events, and we're happy to support them in any way. We're happy to be part of the call. So, communications really key, and I think, another thing I mentioned, the third-party operators and building being added to our logistics meetings. We're also going to bring our private security teams on these calls. That's something that hasn't happened in the past. We've had one-on-ones with them, but I think it's different when they can see the landscape a little bit more, get a little bit more of a coordination with who to contact for PD, because obviously private security is in lieu of in the situation of an emergency. I mean, they can obviously be there to stop, but we want our police officers to actually be the ones to, exhibit the law enforcement components of our community. So better private security coordination, I think, will help. We did experiment with dedicated radio frequencies for our events last year. That was a huge asset, especially during the Leanne Rimes concert when we were running around like crazy. It was good to be able to have the walkie-talkie, the coordination there to be able to communicate if we were in a bind or if there was something happening quickly. Designated mutual aid staging areas, making sure that our fire department can get in and out with their ambulance services if there's an emergency related to any type of injury or heat exhaustion, which we have experienced in our events on a small scale, fortunately. And so just making sure that we're consistent across all event sizes, as I mentioned earlier. I really appreciate Chief Crum and the police department coming out to our Rainbow Crossing. We had a much more secure experience there. I know many of you were in attendance for that. And I think that was really, I think everybody felt a lot safer there. I've received feedback from residents too. It's nice when you get the community feedback on it too. Not just the visibility, but Public Works set up a little bit more of a barricade there too from the road closure side of it. And so I think just keeping that, it is a mindset. It has to be at the forefront, it has to be, top of mind to be able to make sure that safety is the number one. You don't have anything without it. So I think that's how we're approaching. We start with safety and then everything else kind of falls in after that. The Palm Springs International Film Festival. I believe Mayor Pro Tem and I have talked about this one too, that making sure there's a little bit more consistency with that. And what we're going to do with some of these, what I mentioned as smaller events or smaller closures. I think we're not going to do the 30-day out, but we are going to do 2-week check-ins in advance of that, making sure that Public Works, Police, everybody's on the same page before we implement. And so just keeping that conversation versus doing it a few days in advance. I think it's nice to be able to have be a little more preemptive there when it comes to planning and making sure that we have hiccups. The issue with the Palm Springs International Film Festival, and we have addressed this and talked to Public Works, is people park in those spaces sometimes overnight, and then we have to wait for them to leave. And so, but I think from the equipment used there, we want to make sure that there's not as many headaches as we experienced in the past couple of years. And then I mentioned the Rainbow Crossing, and then those are some of the examples. But no event, regardless of the size, everyone could have a potential vulnerability when it comes to a safety lapse, and so we just want to make sure we're keeping that top of mind. So for what I mentioned about Adams training and going to the special event safety seminar, we want to kind of create a universal safety standard, a checklist that we kind of employ. And so Adams working on, he got some guidelines from that at the training to make sure that we have a checklist that is there for implementation. We'd like to have that, for the fall 2025 event season. And that will be, kind of a universal guide that we'll use for communications and events. But we're also going to use it, and we've started coordination with Desert Recreation Recreation District, as they continue to do more events in our city, making sure they're on the same page, making sure they know our safety priorities and protocols, and making sure that we're all on the same page as we work together. They're increasing and enhancing our overall programming a lot, and not just in our parks, but also some amphitheater components as well. So we want to make sure that we're consistent across the board as DRD comes in, and we've had really good dialogue and conversations as we start that as well. But we'll plan on having extended logistics meetings for all events with safety concerns, and make sure that we have consistent standards across our partnerships. So again, this is just a presentation for your information and discussion only. Police department's here, though. There's John Carell from Public Works. Obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions too, but we'll open it up to anything that you got.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Councilmember Lamb?
I do have a question.
Councilmember Carnival? Now it's your turn.
Thank you. How much it will be to install those permanent bollards there? And all,
Money.
If you're looking at the screen, there's 2 phases of installation of the bollards that'd be under the orange and green. Orange would be this upcoming year. Green would be basically the next fiscal year, or we can even push that up. I think those dates are on there wrong. But this is preliminary, this is in work. We've had meetings with PD and in communications on where the optimal locations will be that won't affect, that'll provide the best effect for the initial installations, and then the subsequent installations will cover basically all the other scenarios that could occur. So they're going to be, the team's going to be meeting out in the field, going to walk it, make sure that bollards can go in locations, even on the outside the street in the sidewalk area, so no vehicles can get around that. So you see the budget there, and that was placed in the budget, and that was outlined in there. So year one, 20,000, that'd be about 14 bollards. So that's approximately, your $700 a piece, about $1,000 each. And then year two, 19 bollards, $25,000. And we're going to mimic, if you've seen the ones in India, we're going to mimic that. They're similar to the ones in Palm Springs, probably a little beefier than the ones in Palm Springs.
are these the type of bollards that actually you press a button and it's like a hydraulic piston that just goes all the way down 4 or 5 feet?
No, these, and you know what, I apologize, council member, I cannot hear you. I'm not getting a microphone feed from him as much as,
Can you,
now I can hear you.
now, are these the type of bollards that Palm Springs has installed, which are, they submerge underground and they come up about 3 or 4 feet?
No, these are, now it's working good. These are manual bollards that one person can put in and out. We're proposing that within this budget, we're going to figure out how to get a bollard trailer that's going to be able to load bollards in and bollards out for whichever events occur. So when it's all said and done after a couple of years and we get all these placements in, you'll come downtown on a normal day and these things will be hasped, locked flat. And then when the bollards are needing to be installed at that location, they're going to be able to pick up a hasp and put the bollard in place and lock the bollard in place. So it's fairly efficient so that you don't necessarily, you're going to want a two-man team, or a two-person team, but really one person can pick those up and put them in.
What's the weight and size of each?
Don't have those specific details. We've been looking at different tubing size. The team's already gone out to Indio and interviewed those people, and they stated that one person can lift those up and put those in. And they're substantial enough to stop a normal vehicle.
Okay, that was my next question. Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, John, are these going to be like a multi-use? Are they only going to be used for events, or is there other uses we could use them for in the city in case of emergencies or what have you? Or basically, this is
No, and
just for this only?
it isn't anticipated at this time because these are fixed location bollards, meaning these are basically tubes, steel pipes that are going to go into basically a hole. So it's, that old, the round, this will be the round peg in the round hole at these locations. And as there's an event, if it's a large event and we want to cordon off all the downtown, it's going to be bollards at all the entrances. Obviously, going to work strategically with PD and the fire department, make sure there's the locations where they have the access, and they all know that per the plan that we've been discussing today. Those will be in the emergency access plan. But on a normal basis, they'll be stored on a trailer. On emergency events now, we have the ability to take the water-filled K-rails, so to speak, out to any location and fill them up and then drain them. That's a lot more convenient because these are made to be in a fixed place permanent for a short time and then pulled out.
Thank you.
I was just going to say it's a similar technology to a dental implant.
Yeah, and just to let you know, we did research some of the ones that are automatically and they come up like at the White House or in big event centers, and they're extremely expensive, and so we're not there yet. Other cities have gates too. I've researched them out of state, and they have nice decorative gates, but the challenge is that gate sits there on the side of the road the whole time, and if you don't really have a good spot to put it and it's not decorated enough, it just looks like a regular gate. So these will be really efficient, low cost.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your research and for the presentation.
Absolutely.
And I know this is something that, as you say, we've been talking about, all of us, and then I've talked with you directly and with the police department about some concerns. And I'm glad to see that you're doing planning a little earlier and in some stages. But one of my concerns is, and what I didn't hear, but it might have already been alluded to, like in a final inspection, is sometimes even in the past when we've had decent plans, we find that they're not really implemented very well. And so an example is the water-filled barriers. It's not just here, but it's super common. They would be laid out and they would seem like they would be in good positions, but no one put water in them. So all you had to do was push them over, which was very convenient for staff and for if you needed to make an adjustment. But they were kind of a joke. In fact, to me, they were almost worse than not having barriers because people assumed that you had barriers there. And of course, someone wanting to do harm that wasn't accidental, that was planning it, could just go by and find out that they weren't filled and just ignore them. So I'm hoping that's part of your final, if you could maybe go over,
Sure.
What happens on the day of the event or the hour of the event. Is someone actually assigned to go around and make sure that the plan's in place, and maybe even give a second eye so you don't get a New Orleans type of a thing where you might have bollards, but anybody could drive on the sidewalk, that type of a thing.
Absolutely. I think a couple of points that I'll make there. One, we've added that to our final walkthrough checklist, so making sure that the barriers are filled with water at the different locations. So we've added that in addition to the temporary structures when building and public safety are doing those walkthroughs with us. I think Adam, being a former Public Works employee, the communication has improved immensely between the two as far as communications and events and Public Works staff of making sure that's in the final check, walkthrough process. But absolutely, I take your note of that, and I think making sure that, to your point, if they're not filled with water, they're really a prop, and so that's not really something. We don't want the illusion of security. We want the actuality of it. So certainly priority for sure on our team will be part of that checklist that I mentioned that Adam's developing to make sure that we do. As far as the day of, I think we do probably 2 to 3 walkthroughs. One early early in the morning. The carnival, I think we've even done it the day before the event with the initial walkthrough once they get their final setup. But we always, about an hour or two, at least the Sound Skills, who we work with predominantly, has an internal staff or has a third-party staff walk through. We never let that be just third-party staff, so we've started to supplement that. We have better coordination, I thought, for Taste of Jalisco in particular this year, to make sure, no, I don't want just not that we don't trust you and we want you to do your job, but we need to have verification from staff, because, obviously they're helping with our infrastructure there as facilities and public works, are mostly maintaining our equipment. But what I'll notice sometimes is they'll have a good idea for a move, but before that barrier can be filled with water, it's moved. And then, as you mentioned, kind of that lost in translation, accidental kind of thing, it just ends up sitting there and doesn't get filled again. And so another thing that I also have seen that we've done with the bollards is, and what I hope, or the K-rails rather, that I hope will be enhanced by the permanent bollards, is being able to use more of those K-rails where there's the temporary fencing, and to use that as a supplement, as to add almost a layer of wall to that, which we noticed during Taste of Jalisco last year. So absolutely, I take your point, and it's certainly a priority. We'll make sure that that's up there for sure when it comes to our checklist and walkthroughs.
Well, good. I think it's just like you could have speed limits, but you got to have enforcement. All right, so
absolutely,
you can have these barriers, but somebody has to double check. And even bollards, unfortunately, human nature, what happens is you can put in these places to put bollards, and then when the actual setup comes, somebody says, hey, I can't get my golf cart through there. Can we just take one out temporarily? We'll try to remember to put it back, and next thing you know, you have events where you've got gaps that weren't intended. Somebody has to be the one that goes around and says, hey, that needs to go back. We're not starting the event till that goes back.
Absolutely. And it is usually one of the last things we do is fill them with water. So making sure public works.
Well, I worry. I mean, even, I'm not trying to pick on the police department, but I know when we looked at Esperanza Park, there was a place to drive. We wanted police to patrol. There was some barriers that could be put there. Public Works shared that, well, they don't really intend to put them up unless there's a problem, because the police department won't patrol because they won't get out of their car and remove them so that they can drive through, and then they won't put them back. So I'm just saying that's human nature, that people don't want to do that. And while that's a little different because that's an ongoing thing, even in some of our events are multi-day, those types of things, and it's really easy for somebody, for convenience, to have a great plan and then somebody for convenience to alter it, which, sometimes you do need to alter on the fly to add security, hopefully.
Yeah.
But it can also kind of erode and make a weakness.
No, I appreciate that feedback. I agree with you completely, and I think you also bring up another, good one that I could have included in the presentation: ribbon cuttings, things like Esperanza that could be seen as smaller. Well, if you're not prepared, it doesn't matter the size and scope of the event.
I'm glad you spoke of smaller events, and you bring up the Rainbow Crossing, and that is a great example because we've been doing that for a number of years. Yep. And there were a number of years that there'd be a couple of those little stand-up barricades, usually only on the in one because, nobody would go in the out one, right? And then, sure enough, everybody's down on the ground and somebody would come and
a bike rider would come
to move them or whatever. And there were some years we came and there were none, so we would park our personal cars across, which was probably more secure in some ways. But it really wasn't very professional and well thought out. And then, but like last year is a good example, much better, more permanent barriers, some staff involvement.
I think you'll see that as the trend. I really do. I think we're building that. I think we're all a lot more comfortable in the roles now too, learning a lot. And I think the training that Adam's provided, he's already, in some of the third-party plans that we're getting, and you'll see some tonight that I think maybe we should recommend that they do it this way. And so, like you said, that mindset I think is, and the intentionality of making sure that it's actual safety, not the illusion, I think is really important. So yeah, appreciate that feedback, and we're on that track.
You're headed right there. It's one of those things, it's a lot like police patrol in the way you prevent crime, and everybody says, well, you have all of this and nothing happened, you wasted it. But you didn't waste it because it's a deterrent.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have it, something is eventually going to happen. And unfortunately, something may happen anyways, but I think our public safety is very well trained and
Yes.
other staff involved. If we do have incidents, that's the other part that's not really the topic here, but that's the other part during incidents that we make sure that we have the training already and a plan as to what to do if there is some, multi-victim tragedy, those types of things. So that's a little bit different. But I think we have that part in place, and I think that is something that is ongoing. But this prevention part, some people see it as a waste because it's overkill to have all of this and all this work and everything. But all it takes is one, or
Yep.
sometimes even just an accident. Because I know we had talked about, we've had vehicles come off 111 and do flippy flips into the festival lawn. What if there was a festival going on at that time? Well, sometimes it gets to the point where you just can't prevent everything.
Sure.
You can try to harden things a little bit, but you can't prevent everything. But I think we really, this effort is commendable. So we really try, and probably won't be a one-time thing. And probably as the years go by, we'll learn
Absolutely.
even more and be able to fine tune.
No,
Just
I-
wanted to touch. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
please
just wanted
share.
to touch a little bit on the private security piece
Mm-hmm.
because I heard you mention you're going to tie that in, and I think that's really important and maybe a weak point also that we've had in the past, because I know there's been events where we come up and the police presence is there, but you come to the final check-in,
Yeah.
which isn't maybe appropriate for the police. It's ticketing and
Yes.
entry and stuff like that, and the security is all over the place. They're
Yes.
checking some bags and not, and when you ask them, they don't know criteria. I was just told to stand here, that kind of things. Usually in the multi-day things, usually by day 2, that's better, but I think that's somewhere where we can be better. And again, working with a third party.
Yes.
And sometimes I know they add that security piece in, and we assume they're going to tell them what to do, right? And they're there and they don't know what to do, so they're.
I think you touched on
making it up on the
almost
fly.
exactly the conversation I had with Adam yesterday, actually, as we were prepping for this presentation, that there's a professionalism component and looping them in from a knowledge, standpoint of what the event looks like, giving them more information. I think that's something that, I certainly take your point on that. I think that's a really good note and something that we're trying to work on with the private security.
Yeah, it could just be so much better, because I'm assuming that they're there because they want to try, and they.
Yes,
they don't want so much to
There's
stand
good
there.
intentions, but yes.
Without the instruction as to somebody saying, all right, and sometimes I think we rely on the third party to do that, and maybe justifiably, maybe that really should be their responsibility, but we've seen already that they don't always do that, and so I think that would really add another whole layer of safety.
Yes.
And we've even talked about, like the Leanne Rhymes, one weakness might have been, there was someone seating people, but there was not a real understanding amongst the security. I mean, they kept the stage secure, but as far as like the events, there were different levels of tickets, and then there were issues there, and there was no one really assigned to address that, and then people were just doing it on the fly. So it worked out, but, again, it could have been better. You heard from people
Sure.
that were like, how come there was people in a seat, and then they're acting like they didn't know they couldn't sit there, and making a fuss right in the middle of the concert, that kind of thing. So even at that level, I think eventually we'll get there where we have people, again, with assignments that know what they're supposed
Yes.
to do, and it would be so much.
It was a learning experience for sure. I think we did a nice debrief and learned a lot about that experience of what it takes to run a concert like that. But the feedback that you provided, I take it completely and really appreciate it.
All right, and I wasn't being negative, because
No.
whenever you have an event like
No,
this, there's always
I-
going to be some negative contacts with people.
Yes.
Or something, but.
No, you can, I mean, our third-party security will let you know. I've certainly had conversations with them that have not been on the pleasant side to be able to correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Keep everyone safe and make all of that better, so.
I appreciate all of
So thank
that.
you again, and thank you to the police department for all that they do.
Thank you, Mayor
Other
Pro Tem.
departments.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Questions.
Sure.
One is on this picture, and I'm looking at, a few green spots and a few red spots, but it's not really equating to 33 ballards. Bollards. Bollards.
That's our first take on how we're going to put these out. So the orange represents the first year we do these, and the green will be the second year following up. Mind you, in the budget, we had to divide it up. It's a big project. These are one-time projects, multi-year.
So, and I also don't think that's probably something we should publicize. Here's where all of our protection is going to be, you know. So I understand that you might not have put it all out there, but I'd be interested in seeing the final, even if it's just a visit to your office. And then I did notice that you're asking for $45,000, but you indicated that the bollards were $1,000 each. So that gives us an extra 12. What's the plan?
When you're dividing it up, I was just doing some rough estimates, so 14 bollards at 20,000, that's cost and installation.
I see. Okay. So I didn't see it at 20.
That's going to be a pretty
20.
slim. We're going to be tight on getting that done, but we will get it
Right,
done.
so you had 14 at 20 and 19 at 20, I can't remember, I think it says 25.
No, it's 45,000 total when you
Right,
get down to it.
45,000 for 33. Okay. All right, and my next question is about this, but also about the amphitheater, and it's something that I have shared over the years, and it's a concern I have, and that is, in case of an emergency, we basically have one way in, one way out. And we have an option to do something different there, but we'd have to really be diligent in not putting anything there. And that is, if people were coming out and it was some kind of emergency, we could exit them over into the parking garage as well. So people could be coming out the front, they could be going in the parking garage, at least we'd be divvying it up. But we always have tables set there, and we always have people hanging around, you know, at those entrances and exits. And since the amphitheater holds such a large amount of people, and because we don't take advantage of the back exit or entrance, I feel like we need to step up the possibility of having, you know, a lot of people come at one time, something bad's happened, don't ever want anything bad to happen, but you plan for it anyway. And so as they're coming out, to have a good enough exit that a large amount of people can get out in a very, very timely manner.
So we do have an exit plan. It is the Cathedral Canyon exit, that gate there. We usually have private security. I don't know how much we want to delve into this, but you know, that is typically where the fire trucks can come in and out and exit, is that Cathedral Canyon side on the gate. It's always unlocked and open with security or a police officer next to it. That's the exit plan, not the front of the amphitheater at that main entrance. And so
And I'm not familiar with how large that side entrance is. Is that enough that could take 10 people side by side, you know, like elephants leaving?
it's pretty wide, yeah. That one, the one by Cathedral Canyon. I mean, police may want to, you know, weigh in on that, but I certainly think that it's our widest as far as, you know, being without any type of barriers or blockades or anything like that. That is typically our go-to, where we would have people exit there. I did have some emergency communication messaging. I don't know if it was heard, but over the when we did the Leanne Rhymes concert, we did instruct folks where the emergency exit was on the Cathedral Canyon side, and that seems to be the best solution that we've seen, but we'll take your feedback in and take a look at it.
So again, you're going to push them all to one exit? You're not going to divvy up the exits we have?
Correct. I think
And
that,
what's the thought pattern behind that?
I don't know.
I mean, if we have 3 exits, why would we limit it to 1? That's a question.
Ma'am, I think it's really dependent on what the emergency is and where it's at, right? And so depending on, you know, what it is, we could go in both directions, right? But if it's closer to the south entrance, which is the main entrance, right, then we'd want to push them the opposite direction towards the
But you're
northwest.
keeping all of your options open
Correct.
at every event. But I know, but how I began is how I'm going to end with this. That isn't totally accurate, because every time we have an event, there's tables that block those exits. So we have a table
I see what you mean. So
stopping people from coming
talking
in,
about-
and we have a table stopping them from going to the parking, or police are hanging around. You know, it's not a viable, 100% great place to try to get out. Just want to make sure when the time comes, we can get as many people out as humanly possible.
Right, and that's something that we could probably talk about in the planning phase, is that when, after the people come in, right, because there's going to be a controlled entrance point, right, and that's going to be that south entrance. After everybody's usually in, or mostly in, then we can remove those tables, right? And now it becomes your emergency exit. Without the
I've never
tables.
seen us do that, but I think that's a good plan, and I appreciate you thinking that through.
Sure.
All right, thank you. And I don't have anything happy to end with. So drinks are on me, I don't know. I mean, all right, thanks,
Thank
Ryan,
you.
I appreciate it. Anybody other follow-up questions? All right, you're good to go, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Do we have any comments? I see you coming up.
I don't see anybody here other than staff, Mayor.
All right, so the next one is item B. It is regulations for the operation of food trucks.
And thank you, Mayor. Justin Gardner, your Code Compliance Manager, is here to present this item. And this is a discussion item to give you some information on some potential modifications to the ordinance that we've identified and some information on what the regulations are in the other cities. I expect there will be some discussion and some things to think about and come back for future action depending on the feedback we get from y'all. Justin.
That's right. Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Thanks for having me back once again. Today I want to come and speak with you about the regulations for operation of. Before we get further into it, I want to make a clear distinction that we are not discussing sidewalk vending. Completely different subject. These are permitted food trucks. And part of the reason why this slide deck is in front of you today, and we're doing this study session, is because we have seen an increase in demand from the citizens regarding food trucks. So a little background here, Chapter 5.82 regards the regulations of the operations of food trucks. This ordinance came before council back in 2014 and was read in under 735 and 741. This ordinance focuses entirely on food trucks and their operation, but within the road right-of-way, in the public right-of-way. Our ordinance as current requires that they do have valid permits from both Riverside County Environmental Health as well as Cathedral City business licenses and such. It does require that they have trash control measures in place, and it sets a minimum distance for locations such as schools, intersections, and parking. Vending in the public road right-of-way, historically unpermitted to operate on private property here within the city of Cathedral City, although our ordinance doesn't specifically call out that on private property is forbidden, it also doesn't call out that it is allowed either. So we've taken the stance that it is not allowed. Trucks may instead locate their vehicles on the public right-of-way, and as long as they adhere to these several amendments here. So the mobile food facility is in full compliance with all parking and vehicle code provisions, which apply to the location in which they are parked. The mobile food facility does not obstruct any pedestrian or vehicular traffic, and the mobile food vendor shall not encroach onto the public sidewalk, like setting up tables, chairs, ice chests, salsa bars, the tea lights, or what they call fairy lights that are out there, or placing any of their generators on the sidewalk or out in the street, things of that nature. However, recognizing that it can be difficult to find safe spaces in these public road right-of-way areas and meet the requirements, many of the cities in the Coachella Valley have actually changed or allowed changes to their code to move forward. Here's a sample and then attached to the staff report. There's a little bit more detail, but City of Indio allows food truck operators to operate on private property with the written consent of the property owner. Palm Springs also allows it with the consent of the property owner. Palm Desert allows it as well. However, they have a little bit more requirement of requiring a 750-foot buffer from other nearby brick and mortar restaurants. Coachella is in the midst of running a pilot program to allow food trucks to operate on certain parks and other locations within their city. Desert Hot Springs also allows on private property so long as they have written consent from the property owner. And La Quinta allows it as well with a special use permit in specific locations, with majority, if not all of those cities that do require consent with the property owner, they also require at least a minimum of an administrative reviewed permit. So they would still come down to the city, provide all of their documentation, show that they've been permitted through the County of Riverside Health Department, show that they have permits through us as the city, that they're a legitimate operating business, that they have the written consent from the property owner, and then we will take a look at it, planning will take a look at it, give a stamp of approval at the administrative level, and approve it and send it on if that's the route we want to go.
Before you move on.
Yes, ma'am.
In that scenario, who then maintains liability? So you have a food truck on private property, the whole thing's been looked at. Who is liable if something happens?
If someone's injured on the property?
Sure.
Property owner.
Sure, okay. So it's the property owner, and they have that in writing?
They're going to have whatever deal they make out in a written consent form that dictates how they're going to do it. Ultimately, it's no different than if I were to walk across a parking lot, trip and fall. without the food truck being there, the property owner is still going to be liable. So if they decide to enter into a deal with a food truck owner, and they have people come in there and someone trips and falls or gets hurt, the property owner is still ultimately responsible.
I'll put some thought into that, thank you. Oh, and insurance. Who covers the insurance? Does the food truck person have the insurance, or does the property owner protect them under their homeowner's insurance?
I'm not sure. I'm not an insurance expert. I really don't know.
I'm not a vending person either, but we need to know these things.
The
Right.
answer is they
Thanks.
both should have insurance.
They're both liable
Truck should have liability
equally?
insurance. No, they're going to be different. One's going to be a property owner's insurance. The other one's probably going to be a vehicle insurance. And
And vehicle
perhaps
insurance
any
is not a
insurance that the
vehicle
property owner makes the food truck have.
What if the food was tainted and somebody got sick? Who takes
There
the
would be a
liability?
liability clause.
Yeah, that'd be a general liability insurance.
Or would that be for the property owner as well?
The property owner is probably going to have both a general liability insurance policy and a property insurance rider or policy. The food truck should not only have vehicle insurance, but it also should have a general liability insurance policy and any other insurance that the property owner makes them have to consent to work there. I don't know what that is. I'm not an insurance expert like Justin is, but I know there's a number of different riders that insurance companies will issue to cover specific services.
I don't, one of my concerns is when you launch into something new, and it's new to everybody, you want to make sure people understand what their liability, who's culpable, and how that works in the end. Who's going to write the check?
Sure. I'm going on a limb and assuming that if it was something that was that impactful or detrimental to either the property owner or the food truck, none of the other cities in the Coachella Valley would have already made this leap, or it would have been something that's come to light already.
Maybe you could come back to us and let us know how they cover the insurance on this. Because the city isn't just going to say, go be good. They're going to want to know.
Okay. So complaint data, between the years 2022 and 2025, the city of Cathedral City had only received 5 total vendor issues specific to food trucks. We had a lot of other vendor issues that were related to sidewalk vending that we took care of and tackled. However, for food trucks, we had 5 total complaints. However, 4 out of those 5 were actually unfounded. The food trucks were properly permitted from the County of Riverside, and they were located either on or very near or close to the public right-of-way, choosing safety. So this data does suggest that food truck activity has historically been low in Cathedral City. We do allow them. They are allowed to be here so long as they have their permitting in place and they've been checked out by environmental health. I've also reached out to the County of Riverside Environmental Health Department and picked their brain as far as their concerns with this. They've related to me that they had no concerns, that it does not impact their ability to do their job with ensuring the food safety, doing the food grade, making sure that the trucks are meeting all of their requirements. Wherever the truck is located is not a concern to them. Their concern is the truck that's doing it the proper way. However, they did also relate to me that if they did run into any issues or they did have any kind of challenges because of private property or anything like that, that they would just partner back with us, the enforcement agency, to assist them in taking care of whatever they have to take care of. And they assured me that they have their ability to go through things like warrants or inspection warrants as well through the court, and that they deal with this quite often, and that there's many cities throughout the County of Riverside who do allow food trucks to be parked on private property. So points of consideration here: health and safety concerns can be addressed with proper hand washing stations and trash management. A lot of the cities here in the Coachella Valley, part of that agreement with the property owner is that the property owner would allow access to hand washing and bathroom facilities for the staff of the food truck, so that way they can continue to keep clean and safe. Some of the cities have put a time requirement that says if you can park somewhere no longer than an hour and you're okay, anything over an hour requires hand washing and restroom facilities. But ultimately, it doesn't change really any of the other provisions, such as having trash receptacles, keeping the place safe and free of trash debris or anything unsafe like exposed electrical wires from the generators. The expansion of these operations into private property spaces creates a safer environment also for pedestrian and vehicular traffic. Currently, we do allow these very large food trucks to park on the road right-of-way adjacent to the curb. They're allowed to make sales on the curb side to walk up pedestrians. However, we are very limited on spaces of where people are going to park to then walk up to access the food truck. The food truck is very large in most cases. It obstructs visibility. And also, we do have an elevated risk of vehicular accident and risk of the individuals inside the food truck preparing the food, as well as the patrons that are standing close by. So if unfortunately a vehicle were to rear end or hit one of these food trucks, being it parked on the street legally, it still could elevate that risk. Where if we allowed them to park on, say, a private property in a parking lot, an empty parking lot, it's going to provide spaces for the citizens to go to park safely. They can walk up to the facility more easily, and we're reducing that risk of vehicular accidents. Over the past several months also, there has been a significant increase in demand for food trucks, both coming through our Economic Development Department as well as directly to code compliance. We've had several brick and mortar established restaurants within our city who are interested in branching out into the food truck business to grow their business, to be more available to come support events, say at our amphitheater, or to go test the market in other cities. We also have other very established TKB is one of them who's been at my desk quite often asking, hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? They've gotten their business licenses. They've gone through their background checks. They have their city-issued IDs to allow them to come out and vend. Sure.
Now, I know one particular restaurant that is trying to do that. The very reason is because all these illegal food vendors that we have in the city, which we have a lot, okay, and these food trucks are killing their businesses. So they're trying to branch out to see what they can do. So it's not because it's profitable, it's because they're trying to survive. So that's a huge thing. So it's not because they're seeing a huge profit, it's because they're trying to survive. So let's get that clear there, okay?
So we have a few options that we're presenting to council today to consider. We have option number one, which is to maintain our current ordinance and enforcement to only allow mobile food vending within the public right-of-way. It doesn't remove the food trucks. It doesn't stop them from being in the city. Everything just stays the same, status quo. Option two would be to amend Chapter 5.82 and adopt changes seen in other cities throughout the Coachella Valley, such as permitting on private property, or access with the owner consent, as well as that administrative review. And then lastly, option three here is to implement a type of pilot program without outright changing the ordinance, designate certain areas or time-limited spaces to evaluate this performance and what the community response is to that. Code staff was recommending either options 2 or 3 to be considered. And with that, I will open it up to questions and discussion.
Thank you so much. Councilman?
I just have a few questions. Now, you said food trucks. Does that also include trailers?
That would include whatever is accepted by the County of Riverside Environmental Health Department and blessed off by them as an operational mobile food facility.
Okay, so a lot of these lots that be empty might be zoned for residential, let's say. So we're going to break code and zoning and to say, okay, now a food truck can go on this property or a restaurant?
So residential, our suggestion would be for residential areas, that's a hard no. We'd want that space and separation. So this opens the discussion for modifications to the ordinance as the council sees fit. So we don't have to necessarily mirror any one particular other city or other entity. We can mold it to best fit our community.
Okay, and then you have hours down here, time of day restrictions. Again, what about the noise level? If somebody wants to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning, we're going to have a time restriction that 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, they have to shut down?
If that's what the council desires, absolutely.
Okay, so this is all open for discussion.
100% open for discussion. We're bringing this to you to let you know that there is an increase in interest in this and that we have identified some potential safety issues to not only our community and our citizens who are frequenting these food trucks, but the staff that's inside the food trucks as well.
Okay, I just have 2 more questions. I'm also concerned that a lot of it have to do with probably insurance, ADA approved. A lot of these lots are not paved. They're going to be rock or sand or what have you. So how's a wheelchair going to be able to?
Our recommendation that they would only be allowed on improved lots. So
what
vacant
lot?
parcels would not count.
Improved?
Improved lots, meaning there would be some type of asphalt or concrete there.
Okay.
Not empty desert dirt lots. Because we run into food safety issues there as well, vehicles traveling in and out, creating dust. There's other concerns there as well. If staff had a recommendation, it would be to allow this on improved lots only.
Okay, that's only, but fair. Then my last question would be, you know, Cathedral City is trying so hard to really beautify our city, you know, with our new buildings, our new shopping center, Starbucks, and the fueling station. That's all modern look. What right will we have if somebody has a pretty dumpy looking, and there's some pretty bad looking food trucks that give really good food, you know, but aesthetically it kind of doesn't give the city a good reputation seeing a not desirable looking vehicle out there. So would we have any say they have to be to our approval of the appearance of the truck and signage too? I mean, how, are they going to be able to? I'm asking too many questions. Let's start with the approval of aesthetically what the vehicle looks like.
I want to defer to Eric for that. I want to err on the side of caution and say we probably couldn't on that because it's so subjective what is
Okay.
unappealing to one and not the other. Eric?
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to look at it at a case-by-case basis. Obviously, the vehicle would have to have its permits and be deemed to be sufficiently healthy and pass get the county health ordinance. As to the exterior appearance of the vehicle, I don't know that we can regulate that.
Okay, that's fine, fair enough.
Signage, probably, like we could regulate any commercial sign, as long as it's not content-based. But the exterior appearance of the
Okay.
vehicle, I don't think so.
That's good. And then signage, I know in the past we've had some pretty bad looking cardboard signs painted by hand. I wouldn't probably disapprove with a sandwich board or something, but again,
All things that we can
something we
add,
can
and we could
discuss.
also reference our already adopted code. We do have a code for signage specifically currently, so we could always refer to that code as well.
okay, then I think my last question, sir, can we do a limit on them? Like, say we're going to issue 12 and that's it and hold it? I mean, do we want 50, 60? You know, if we can do a limit on them, might be
I believe we
something to look
can.
into.
From a planning aspect, Andy, can we limit that?
So I think from the standpoint that we're looking at potentially an administrative permit, potentially we could cap the number of administrative permits that are issued. I would say that this may be an area where we want to think about a pilot program, where we want to see just what the response is from the business community as well as from residents before we commit to too much. And to reiterate what Mr. Gardner has said, this is intended to be a temporary use. This is intended to be something that comes and goes. It's not meant to be a permanent fixture on a lot. This is something where a business, a property owner might have a food truck there for a duration of time over the course of a day, but that food truck is intended to leave. So that they're not permanent installations or permanent setups.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Yeah. This is a very interesting discussion. I like the idea of a pilot program. I'm always a little bit hesitant to launch into something and say either no or yes without giving it a try first. And I like the idea of, it says La Quinta has a permitted food truck part in Old Town La Quinta through a temporary use. The idea of it having for special events, like having a 5-day window, let's say for LGBT days, and 5-day window for Taste of Jalisco, and having it specific, and then a pilot program, and see how it goes. I think that is a good way to start.
Right.
That's
We've
just my
seen that
thought.
food truck parks are trending. They
Okay,
are
yes,
fairly
I know they
popular in a
are.
lot of areas.
Right.
Some will bring them out in conjunction with a street fair or
Right.
something like that in conjunction with other events.
Right.
Some cities even just say, hey, every Tuesday and Thursday night.
I see.
They're
I like that idea. And we just attended one. It was actually not just recently, but it was last year in Miami. And it was on private property, but they had a car show, and then they had this food truck little caravan. It was just wonderful. So it can work. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, thank you again. Now, of course, as you can see, I'm not pro food trucks. Now, one of the reasons that I mentioned is because they are legally, because they are getting permitted from us to operate, but they truly are not charging sales tax, they're not paying sales tax, they're not being regulated as they should. And also, my concern is that we are opening Pandora's box to many illegal food vendors, which they are now, and they continue to appear. And you guys have done a great job stopping them or trying to minimize them as much as you can. But I think that by us allowing them to do so, we're just going to open up Pandora's box, and a lot of them are going to operate pretending that they are permitted. Now, I like the idea that we do permit them in certain areas, in certain events only, or if we are, come up with a certain, for instance, if the owner of the old Walmart wants to do that and wants to allow them to do that once a week, I'm okay with it in that particular area. But definitely, I do not want to see them near other restaurants within 750 feet like Palm Desert does. And definitely a specific, if we allow them in a specific area, we have to limit the number. And we definitely have to make sure that, for instance, they have restaurants must have parking, must have handicap access, must have bathrooms, must have a lot of things that we must actually demand that these food trucks, if we do allow them, to also have. No lighting, like you mentioned earlier as well, no string lighting, no table seating, which a lot of them do have tables. I just drove by one on San Luis Rey last week. They were selling hot dogs, and they had tables outside for people to sit and lights, okay? And of course, a lot of them are setting up near other restaurants. For instance, there's one that always parks near, Sky Blue Water and Ramon Road. Well, I don't know if they're associated with or not, but other food trucks want to park in the same area. Rancho Grande actually is a restaurant. So they either are allowed to do that, they either belong to them, or they're stealing business from them. And all they are is they're on the street, which is adjacent to it. And I, as a matter of fact, I called you or staff several times about a minivan that sells food out of their trunk. Actually, they were parked in between Sosa's and Tortillas. So they're stealing business. So if we are able to give a specific number only, allow them in specific areas and only in a specific times, I'll be probably okay to do it as a pilot program. But there's a lot of things that we must do to prevent them. We're trying to beautify the city, make sure that we don't have a food truck in every corner, but the 750 feet, temporary, mainly for just events or a specific area like Palm Springs is doing, to a specific area at a specific time, a specific time to operate. I think I will be okay with that, but I'm not okay with them being allowed to operate openly and have as many as we are allowed to. So that's my take.
So we only have a small handful of currently permitted food vendors, these food trucks. Some of the ones that you mentioned, like the one of the minivan, we would more classify as the illegal sidewalk vending, where they haven't gone through any permitting process. They're just completely under the table, selling out of the trunk, as you mentioned. So this ordinance is going to be more specific to permitted, proper food trucks that have gone through the health. As far as requiring the food trucks to have ADA access and some of the things you had mentioned, I believe that might be a little difficult. The intent of the food truck is more like a drive-through. Like if I wanted to go through McDonald's, get my food and continue on to go home. And I don't know how we would write into our municipal code those types of requirements, but allowing them to go onto private property that may have parking spaces in their agreements allowing staff in the food truck to access bathrooms and hand washing facilities. It just increases the food safety, it increases the people safety. So it's something to look at and consider.
Also, since they are going to be possibly located or will be located only in improved parking lots, in other words.
Right. So we
If
can
it's-
even put language in there that says, okay, here's, let's say, a mechanic shop. They close at 5 PM. The vendor can only set up at 6 PM until whatever time. So there's no other activity or customers that should be going to that parking lot. It wouldn't impact the amount of stalls because the business is closed. So we could always add that
What I was going to
language.
suggest, Justin, I think that the feedback we've gotten, and we still probably need to hear from Mayor Pro Tem, but the feedback that we've gotten gives us the things then that we can take a deeper dive into some of these ordinances that the other communities have and see how they handle the things that you've brought up. And then that allows us to come back for a study session follow-up with some suggestions on how this could work. The pilot, all the things that you've mentioned. So,
Definitely have a limited number, but also if there's more, if it's a plaza, for instance, if they want to set up in an area in a parking lot that there's 5 businesses, I suggest that just because the property owner wants to get additional income, I suggest that we must get approval from every single tenant, and you must get 100% approval from every single tenant, that it is okay to have them there. And also maybe in 6 months or so, at first, they might be okay with it. 6 months later, they might say, you know what, this is not what we were told. This is
Right.
completely different. It's not working out. So maybe review with them after, if we do go through this, talk to them in the near future to see how it's working. If they say no, well, if it's not working out, if it's affecting their business, maybe pull their permits. Thank you.
Well, a lot of interesting discussion. So I know when I first saw this and read the staff report, I had a lot of concerns because it seems like a simple proposition. I'll just take them off the street and put them in the adjacent parking lot, and then it'll improve safety. I would say it could improve safety. I would couch that. I know in your presentation it will improve safety, and I almost because it depends on how it's executed, whether it improved anything. But you've added a lot since in the question and answer saying, oh, well, that was staff's recommendation, like not on residential lots, but it wasn't in the staff report. So you could have saved some, if you put some of that in the staff report, if that's your recommendation, that could have helped a lot. And on improved lots, because when I looked at it, I'm thinking, well, I have a couple of neighborhood business park lots that I own on Ramon Road. So can I just grade it and rent it to a food truck to operate there on that property? And yeah, or a bunch of them, and that would be fine. Aren't we trying to have people build permanent restaurants? So what I'm saying is what you've added since then, yes, those things all need to be included. And the temporary, because that was why I'm like, well, okay, so I'm a business and I'm required to have, by the size of my business, 24 parking spaces. But now I'm going to rent a big portion of that area out to a food truck that's going to come every day and is going to run there every day. And why would we allow that when we require a certain amount of parking spaces? It needs to get down to the minutia of how long and where, and they can't operate their business on handicap parking spaces. This is not so simple. And so I don't know what these other cities do, because when they require with permit, I would think they would have a lot of areas that they need to cover. Not enough to necessarily squash somebody that wants to do it, but if you don't include it in there as a requirement, you're going to have a lot of problems. So
Absolutely.
I'm with my colleagues intrigued with the possibility, but I think that there are perils, so I'm not ready to, and I'm not hearing anybody else is ready to just jump off the deep end on this and just say, oh yeah, owner consent and just a cursory register with the city permit and go at it, because all kinds of things are likely to happen really soon. So you're here for feedback, so I would certainly say not residential, and improved lots only with some limitations, real limitations there. Temporary use, yes, temporary use. And if you were going to make it so when the business was closed, that kind of thing, I don't know if that's going to work, because I think a lot of them want to operate when the business is open because they want to cater to the mechanic shop example, or or their customers. But I think that there should be some consideration, and some of that might have to do with, well, how big is their parking lot? I mean, their parking lot's already, their mechanic shop, many of them, they're already jammed because they're moving cars in and out, and they're already parking cars on the street. And so, but to make extra money, they might be, well, we're just going to, use the food truck and then move the cars farther down the streets, like on Ramon, down the residential street. And again, so we're improving safety, are we? Because maybe for that food truck and everybody's making money, but I mean, I think it really, there needs to put a lot of hard thought into that. And it's already been discussed, maybe some liability issues. I'm not so worried about liability for each other. I'm a little more worried about liability for the city. So that, a requirement there that there be some liability concern, whatever the city attorney thought was good would be another thing that should be included. So as has been said, I'm intrigued with the possibility. I'm actually okay with, if it's the proper place, like you had talked about the Walmart, well, what if they did want to set up once a week, one afternoon, where they had, 5 or 8 food trucks there, and they put out some picnic benches.
It'd be a great location.
That might work, because that's a big, empty, vacant area. But to blanket say, well, they could do that anywhere, then that would be, that would be a real problem.
Yep.
Just because a property owner decided, oh, I'm okay with it. They might be okay with it, but it really needs to be, are we okay with it, looking at the health and safety and welfare of our residents, the visitors, everyone that might use it. So like I said, I'm open to what I would see as a pilot program. A lot more detail and a lot of thought needs to go into it. So I'd be interested to see you come back with something with maybe some more detail and some more thoughts.
The presentation and the staff report may have been limited, but this is, I'm getting exactly what I needed out of this, which was the engagement with the council, so I can come back with these ideas, with these concerns, and more tailor something, so that way we can make bigger decisions later.
All right, yeah, but like things that have already been discussed, like signage, where are we going to allow it? If it's a big food truck rodeo, you might be more liberal, but if it's right off the roadway, where we might limit our businesses to certain sign rules, then again, we would need, to me, it also needs to look at equity as to, well, we're not going to give them exceptions to have, bigger signs or things that we wouldn't allow other businesses to have. So, yes.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
One more thing.
I also wanted to congratulate you, because Cathedral City has done an amazing job actually controlling the illegal food vendors. In the past, there wasn't one, there was 10, 20 every week. Now, there's only one every other week or so. And they do watch out for you guys. They do look out for you guys to make sure you're out there. So great job. We just have to make sure that this past week, I did catch 2 of them. And the same people that are doing it are the same people that have been doing it in the past, that do not listen, that we are able to give them a permit if they wanted to, but they continue to do so. As a matter of fact, the same person that was selling food off the trunk is the one I spotted just the other day selling food off the trunk again. And the hot dog place was not the first time. It was the second or third time that I've seen it. But you guys are doing a great job. Just keep it up. Just be a little bit firm whenever you run into somebody that has violated our permit or orders more than once. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. So I share most of the input from council, and we have all of these cities that are already doing it.
Yes.
As you know, we're taking a couple of weeks off. What's the chance in the next 2 weeks you could send us copies of the agreements with the other cities? Let us see what other people are doing. We don't need to invent the wheel, and we sure don't want the Clampetts to move in, so, I mean, we're not Beverly Hills, but we're
I
pretty
can
darn
reach
nice.
out to all of those cities before the end of the week and get the process going. Hopefully I can get them sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so if we just had those to look over, that might be a good guiding light for us, that, why invent the wheel? So
Right.
I appreciate your time. Do you all agree that that would be a good next step? Yes? Yes, okay. I think we're all in.
And if I may, Councilmember, I'd like to share this with everybody since it was a good segue into this. We actually did recently make contact with an illegal food vendor out of their own private home. Officer Jose Mendez made contact, explained to them what the ordinances were, that you can't just pop up a coffee shop inside your garage. Provided them all of the information for Riverside County Health, the micro enterprise home kitchen process. That gentleman wrote a glowing email, kudos email for Officer Jose Mendez because they actually got granted their MECO license from the county, and they were coming in today to get their business license with us, and they will be on the up and up now. So they are out there doing good things.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
New growing, budding business in our city.
Thank you for doing the work, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
We are now going into closed session. Mr. City Attorney, will you please read the closed session items?
Be happy to do that, Mayor. You have 5 items on your closed session this afternoon. The first 3 are all conferences with legal counsel. The first is an existing litigation matter. The second is initiation of litigation with regard to property at 68625 Tortuga Road. There's also another property listed there. It's the Hampton Court. That one's coming off. Today we're not going to do that item. It's going in a different route. The third conference with legal counsel is one item of anticipated litigation. Then you have a conference with your real property negotiator with regard to all of the APN locations listed under property location. And finally, you have a public employee appointment discussion with regard to the position of city manager. With that, if there are any public comments, you could make those at this time.
So, Mayor, I do have one comment for the record. We received from David Kozlow, and he provided comments regarding the appointment of the city manager. And that's all I have.
So much. So we will recess now to closed session. We'll see you all in a bit.